So to give you some examples of antecedent-based interventions, and we're going to discuss these at more depth, but this looks like environment modification, scheduling or creating routines for your learners, incorporating learner preference, providing choice where you have opportunity to give your learners more choice in the things that they interact with or the things that they participate in, and maybe modifying instruction or activities to best suit your learner. And we're going to discuss how you can do this or what this might look like. I know as paras, a lot of these things you might not have complete control over, but we're going to talk about things that you can maybe do to set your learner up for success, or that you could even, suggest to your teacher, like, hey, this would be a great antecedent-based intervention to put into place for this learner because XYZ. Antecedent-based interventions are evidence-based. So it's an evidence-based practice, and all of these things are types of antecedent-based interventions. So all of these things have potential to work depending on your student's behavior. So when we're talking about environment modification, this is essentially arranging or setting up the classroom to address or prevent behaviors. This can be used in any setting. So even if it's a general education classroom or a special education classroom or self-contained, you can modify the environment to help set your student up for success. These can be used to specifically address functions of escape, or when they try to avoid something, or if they're trying to obtain something or get something like a tangible. And we're going to talk about that. So when we're looking at environment modification and we're trying to address behavior such as escape, or if they're trying to get something or obtain something, a lot of times this looks like addressing the student where they're at, maybe placing a visual boundary for them or visual supports around the classroom so they know where everything is. If you have a situation where a student is eloping, which means leaving the classroom altogether, you might have to get creative of where you place the student in the classroom. A lot of times when we go into classrooms and they're just saying, well, he tries to leave all the time, or he just walks out of the room, and we go in to observe, a lot of times the student's desk is placed right next to the door. So if you have a student that's leaving the classroom, you have to get creative on how you modify that environment so the student is maybe not near the door. Maybe there's a para between the door and the student. Maybe put up blinders or partitions so the student can't even see the door or see what's next to them. Just getting creative on how you set up your classroom proactively to be able to prevent your student from maybe eloping or leaving the classroom or engaging in something to try to get something, or get out of something. These are all common behaviors that can be addressed through ABI of environment modification. When we discuss instruction modification, this is going to look like providing visual instructions or directions, maybe breaking up the assignment for the student, giving them written instructions, maybe even reducing the number or the length of the assignment altogether, or providing breaks for your student. If you don't care that the student is, whether they do 20 problems or 10 problems to show that they have learned the concept of what you're teaching them, then give them the shorter number or give them the choice there. Because the idea here is if your student doesn't want to engage in it and you just need them to show that they have understood and learned the concept, then don't provide them with a lengthy assignment. Or you might need to modify it in the beginning and then start adding on to it so you can show that they can attend to a task for a longer period of time. But if you have a student who is trying to escape or get out of work, this is a great antecedent-based intervention to put into place and build on it so eventually they can do the set number that you really want them to be able to do, but that might not be an expectation we can have of them in the beginning. So they're not getting out of the work altogether. We're just teaching them to be able to, sit at a longer time and do it, or maintain attention for a longer period. But we're going to work up work up to that. We're not going to just say, hey, here's 30 problems, do them all. For a typically developing student, absolutely, that might be something they can do. But as a para, if you're having to work one-on-one with a student or with a group of students, give them 5 problems to begin with and give them a break. And then give them another 5 and then give them a break. Or maybe just cut the paper in half and give them half the sheet at one time and then do something preferred in the middle and then the second half of the sheet. So they're still completing the whole assignment, you're just getting to break it up. So modifying instructions, modifying assignments can look a number of different ways, and we're going to dive into that just a little bit as well. So if you see here, you can see that in the math book, it's telling the student, just do the numbers with the check marks. So the teacher went through proactively and said, I really need to see that they've learned these concepts, or I really need to know that they're practicing these concepts. So the teacher just checked the ones that they need to do. And what's really cool about this is they left a note in there and just said, just do the ones with the check marks. They didn't announce it in front of the class. They didn't say it in front of other peers. It wasn't a big deal. So it kind of takes away some of that, hey, why does he get to do less than I do? That can often happen if, peers see that they're modifying instructions for certain students to support them, because that is a natural thing that does happen or can occur. And this kind of just prevents it. It says, just leaves a note in there proactively, so the student knows exactly what the expectation is. You can also provide a visual timer so the students know how long they have to work. Or this is another example of visual directions. Not all students can handle a written instruction or verbal instructions. So having like visual pictures of what exactly they're supposed to do is another option. The next thing we're going to talk about is providing choice. Choice has so much power with students. If you do not care how something gets done, you just care that the total task is complete, you can provide your students with choice, and that's going to increase buy-in and motivation altogether. I promise you. So different opportunities that you can provide choice to your students would look like providing them choice with where they sit. Do you want to do your work at the table, or do you want to do it on the carpet or in a comfy spot? A lot of times they're going to choose the carpet or the comfy spot, and it doesn't matter as long as the work gets done. Do you want to use a gel pen or a pencil? They might choose gel pen. If you just care that they get the writing assignment done, you don't care what they use, give them some choice there. If you don't care what order they complete the tasks, you just care that the tasks get done, let them choose whether they do the hardest one first or the easiest one first or the most preferred. If you don't care, let them choose. You can let them choose when to complete assignments, what reward they work for, what toy or activity they get in order, maybe something that they choose to do at recess. There are so many different choices we can provide our students. We always like to point out here at Project Access that the number of choices that you make before leaving the house in the morning, that can add up. That number gets so huge. I couldn't tell you how many choices I make before I come to work in the morning. So it's okay to provide choice for your students. Our students deserve the opportunity to make a choice for themselves as well. So this here is just an example of a couple different choice boards. So a choice board is an awesome antecedent-based intervention to put into place when you are providing learners with choice, because it's that visual representation of what the choices are. I mentioned this earlier, but not all students are able to process information verbally, or they might need a little extra time. And if you can pair that with a visual representation, it will really help your learners learn the skill of making a choice. Sometimes learners on the spectrum have a hard time making a dead choice, a decisive choice. So giving them the visual representation is just another way we can support our learners and give them opportunity to choose for themselves. And then this is an example of what we mean by learner preference. So this is incorporating what your learners really love into the work itself. Again, just like choice, it's going to increase buy-in and motivation. So if your student really loves Disney princesses, they're going to be way more likely to want to read a book about Disney princesses than they will about 2 characters they don't even relate to or even know. You can also do this with their math homework. by incorporating Minecraft or Pokemon or something that they really, really like. Again, if you really don't care how the students get something done, you just need to see that they know the concept. Make it something fun. Your students are going to be way more likely to be able to do it if you incorporate something that they prefer. And this can even work for their token economy or their token board. The token board itself should be reinforcing, and we'll talk about that in reinforcement. But this is an example of how you can incorporate learner preference in something like that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is scheduling and routines. For learners on the spectrum, routine is so important and vital. So you can create this into an antecedent-based intervention and be able to prevent some problem behavior you might see that students might have because they don't know what's coming up in their day. It might create some, extra anxiety if they're not sure what to expect next. So scheduling and routines can prevent that. So this might look like altering preferred and non-preferred activities and having that visual representation for learners to see that. So they know if they complete this activity, then they'll get to do Chromebook time, or they'll get to play with Play-Doh or go to the sensory gym. Something like that they really like to do after something that they really don't like to do. And then you can also incorporate visual cues or timers so they know how long something lasts, both preferred and non-preferred. You can alter their specific routines, step-by-step visuals, or creating extra time before or after class. So this one I think is super important because we can actually incorporate that extra time within their schedule, because we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to do things that they really like to do. We talked about altering that preferred and non-preferred, but giving the time and space to do that, because a lot of times what happens is a student takes a really, really long time to work on something that's non-preferred. It takes them a long time to get on task, and then, we don't have time to go do that preferred thing that we want to do. We really want to make sure that when we create a schedule or routine for our learners, that it's something that we're able to stick to. So we might need to incorporate a few different ABIs. So that might look like modifying instruction or assignments, as well as incorporating time to reward them for that in their schedule. When we're looking at schedules and routines and looking to implement them with our students, you can do this a couple of different ways. If your students are old enough, you can have them create their own Google Calendar or Outlook calendar, whatever that looks like, in digital form. If your students aren't ready for that, you can do a picture schedule or a written word and picture schedule. You could even make it manipulative so they can actually take the pieces off once that task is complete. Or you could just do a written schedule for each learner. So to wrap up antecedent-based interventions, we want to remind you that antecedent-based interventions are meant to prevent problem behavior. What it is not is a prompt to have students engage in a preferred behavior or what our expectations are. It's just us saying, hey, we're having this problem behavior, and how can we modify our actions or our environment so the student doesn't engage in that behavior at all. Antecedent-based interventions can look a variety of different ways, and there are so many options. So if you have any interest in this or you want to learn more, I highly encourage you to check out our online workshop all about antecedent-based interventions.